Your Power Platform estate is developing. You're on a journey. There's a wave of activity. But you're not alone. Others have experienced this too. And Microsoft's PowerCat team developed something to help you. It's called the Center of Excellence Starter Kit. It's a beast. Now you need to know what you can do with it. So let's start.
Hello, governors, and welcome back to Power Squared. Today, we're going to be talking about the Center of Excellence Starter Kit. We're going to be looking at some common gotchas that you might not have realized when you were installing the kit or using the kit. And then we're going to go into a couple of the apps and what they do and how to use them.
It's going to be a really interesting episode, I think, Charles. So why don't we start with the gotchas then, and some of the things that I know have caught me out before. I'm sure I've caught you out before when installing the Center of Excellence Starter Kit, how to avoid them.
Yeah, so one of the things that happened to me when I went to install the Center of Excellence Starter Kit is that it just wasn't working, and I couldn't understand why. I could figure out that there was something wrong with the permissions, but when I was looking at the permissions, I could see that I had Power Platform Admin, but something was going wrong. After digging into it and reading through Microsoft Learn, I discovered that actually I need to have direct access to Power Platform Admin. So I need that role to be directly assigned to me, whereas it had been assigned to me via a group.
So yeah, it's caught me out in the past as well. And one that I always seem to forget is licensing. It's quite important that to install the starter kit, you need to have the right licenses. People seem to think sometimes that you only need one or the other licensing, but you do actually need a Power Apps Premium and a Power Automate Premium, don't you, for this?
Yeah, you do. And even with having those licenses, you also need to be careful about how large your estate is. So how many apps and flows you have, how many actions there are in the flows, because you're potentially going to hit those API limits regardless.
Yeah, really interesting with the licensing, and anyone that accesses any of this going forward after the install, they would also need a license as well, wouldn't they? But that's not all of the licensing. Is it just a Power Apps Premium they would need, or do they need other ones as well?
Just a Power Apps Premium, but what about the Power BI side? Do we need any licenses for that?
Yeah, we do, don't we? We need to probably use a Power BI. Is it Pro, I think? Power BI is not my strong point. It's a Pro license to access the Power BI reports at the very least. But don't quote me on that. But I'm sure it's if it's not that one, it's a premium. So one or the other, right? So yeah, you would need Power BI licenses as well to view the reports. Any other gotchas you think we need to cover, or is that the main kind of core ones, do you think?
I think those are the main things, but just be really careful as you go through Microsoft Learn and you're reading through the step-by-step instructions that you don't miss something, because if you miss something, it can unravel many other things.
Yeah, really good point. And we'll include the Microsoft Learn article in the description so that you can obviously quickly access it. But yeah, definitely follow through that. I feel like it's very well documented now. It's just some of those little things still catch people out from time to time. But it's a really fairly straightforward thing to follow, if not a little bit daunting because there's a number of steps. But once you've done it a few times, it becomes second nature.
Yeah. And hopefully you just have to do it once as well.
Yes.
If you're just doing it for your own organization, just do it once and you're done, and you only then have to upgrade it. Speaking of upgrading it, actually, how about we go through the upgrade wizard and explain what that's about? So to get to the upgrade wizard, so we go to our environment where we've installed the Center of Excellence Starter Kit, and we open up the solution that's called Center of Excellence Core Components. And then within that, we have hundreds of different things, but what we're looking for are the apps that have been installed with it. So you can filter down to the apps on the left-hand side here. And then within here, we've got this CoE setup and upgrade wizard. So if we play that, and of course, as Josh said, we need to have a license for this. Then Josh, do you want to tell us a bit more about this app? What's going on? What is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the kind of upgrade wizard, I think I'd like to say it's relatively new. I remember the starter kit before this was really a thing. You used to have to do it all manually, but this is really good in that it kind of helps you kind of through that journey of configuring, installing, and setting up the starter kit. You could see there as you were going through and accessing this, the amount of components in that solution that are there. There's so much to kind of set up and manage. So it only makes sense that the team at PowerCat actually kind of put a wizard on top of this to kind of help people go through it. So I believe this is the recommended kind of way to install, upgrade the starter kit now. They don't really recommend the manual method, but all this is doing, as it says really on the tin, is it's giving you a wizard kind of process to run through so that you don't miss any steps out when you're installing or upgrading the starter kit. And as we're kind of on that subject, just briefly, I think one of the kind of key things to call out is, or kind of something I like to remember with the starter kit stuff, is the environment that it lives in should be viewed as quite expendable. If anything goes wrong, rather than spending lots of time trying to troubleshoot it, just dispose of that environment, spin up a new one, reinstall the starter kit, and off you go again. It's a lot easier than trying to go through all of these components if there's a big issue, right? Would you agree with that?
That does make sense, yeah. I think one of the things that you need to be careful with is if you have extended it. So if you have extended it and you're losing that production environment, that it's not going to undo all of your good work. So of course, when you're extending it, you have unmanaged solutions that you then deploy into production. So you basically just point them at a different production environment.
So yeah, definitely take backups of any kind of extensions that you're creating for this. But yeah, for sure, just keep that in mind if you're going down that route. So yeah, the setup wizard, it helps you with all these prereqs that you need to meet, any kind of communication that you have. So you can see there any prerequisites that we've got, any communication methods that we need to configure, any settings. These are actually environment variables within the solution that you configure, that'll help get everything set up. And then that's the setting up where the inventory data is going to kind of query and store, I believe. Is that right? So we've got the option to do it via cloud flows or export it to a data lake.
Yeah, so this is where the cloud flows are building up your inventory, which is what the majority of people use. And the data export was in preview, but it looks like you can't use it anymore, or I'm not sure. From what I've heard, potentially you can't use this anymore. But what's coming in the future are going to be APIs. So we'll get APIs where we can access the data that currently those cloud flows are collating.
That'd be quite good in the sense of it should make things a little bit easier, I would imagine, and rather than having to use a rather large number of cloud flows to do inventory of components.
And for those organizations hitting those API limits, moving to APIs will mean that they can then avoid hitting those API limits.
Exactly. So there's lots of benefits to come. This one's quite interesting because this is where you actually run those important setup flows for actually inventorying your kind of tenant data effectively. So you can see there, what ones you need to run, when it was last run, and the actual current status of it. So good addition to have, I think. I believe the next step's more of the same, just more specific to actually inventorying of the components. There we go. And then we've got the ability to share all of those other apps that you kind of just got a quick glimpse of, and that will hopefully run through as we get kind of further into this series. But you can see there's a lot there. So this allows you to share them with other users. And then lastly, we've got obviously the dashboards that come as part of this and how to get them set up and published as well. And I believe that is more or less it in terms of the initial setup or upgrade. There is another section for more features, which we could quickly check. And then this is more around just enabling additional features that aren't kind of critical, but might be useful for anyone configuring the starter kit. So you can see there's environment request management, which we've obviously talked about environments in the past, but putting a process on top of that, capacity alerting, compliance. There's a whole bunch of stuff here, but take a look and see. And if you click on configure this feature on anyone, it will kind of run you through the process of setting that up, which is really, really useful. Anything else you want to add on the upgrade wizard, Charles, before we get into some of the really fun stuff?
I think that's pretty much it. As you viewers can see, that there's links to documentation there, so it's worthwhile clicking on those links and reading more about everything, because you really do learn a lot from it.
Guess in summary, don't go through the pain of doing all of this manually. If you can do it through the setup wizard and the upgrade wizard, do it that way. You'll be able to sleep more easily at night, right? Rather than trying to do it all manually, which becomes a bit of a headache. Although doable, but yeah, it's a bit more of a headache. So let's get into some of the kind of other applications. And I think the one we want to kind of go into next is the admin view, right? This one is quite the wealth of information. There's lots to digest here, right? Do you want to maybe start by walking us through what the admin view is in the starter kit, what we can use it for, and why it's important?
Yeah, the admin view app is the app that I use the most to do with governance in Power Platform. And in essence, it's an inventory app. It shows you all of your inventory that has been collected by those cloud flows. So you have all of your, as you can see on the left-hand side, all of your apps, all of your flows, your environments, connectors. You have so much information in here. When you're wanting to govern your ecosystem, someone might be contacting you about a specific app or flow and you need to do something with it. Well, this is your place to go to find out more details about it. So I'll very regularly be coming in here and viewing flows and viewing apps in order to understand what's happening with them. So let's say we've got this app that's in my environment called request flow value. I can come into here, I can see who made it, who's the current owner of it, whether it's been started or not, whether it's been orphaned or not. And this inventory records all of the information. And when a flow is deleted, it doesn't delete the record, it just marks it as deleted. So you have a history of things that have been made, but you've lost essentially.
So that's really interesting then, isn't it? So a couple of things I'd like to pick up on that you just said there. So first things first, that those kind of components that we configure as part of the inventory, those flows, that as a result of running all of that, that's then brought into here, isn't it? Amongst other places, but primarily it's all brought into here to give us all of this information that we can then utilize to create more informed decision making in our governance, right?
That's right. Yeah, they're called sync flows. They name them as sync, SYNC, and they're basically synchronizing your existing ecosystem with the Dataverse database that it's created for the Center of Excellence starter kit. And so you'll have these flows running overnight. So you'll have a daily refresh of this data.
That's really good. And in terms of what it's actually collecting, is this doing it for everything in the tenant that, across multiple environments, across that full estate? So, if we've got tenant A, it's going to collect and inventory everything in tenant A. Is that how this works?
Pretty much, although you can configure things. But yeah, essentially it's collecting all of your environments. So this is on a development tenant, so we don't have too many environments. We've got 16 rows in there. So it's getting all of our 16 environments. It's telling us how many apps and flows exist in those environments. It's telling us what type of environments they are. And we can go into those environments, and then under related here, we can then see all of the flows, for example, that exist in this environment. So we have 9 flows in the management environment. So it's incredibly useful. And because you have these relationships, you can start from one place in order to move to another place to understand what's happening.
So that is really useful then, isn't it? Being able to get that information at such granular level. And I guess one of the things that I know I've struggled with this in the past is information overload. There is lots to take in here, isn't there? So would you recommend a particular way to kind of get started when looking at the admin view? How would we use this information to come up with a bit of a governance plan and have more kind of better insight to what's happening in a tenant to then be able to use that to come up with a governance plan, that type of thing?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's all about the questions that you're wanting to ask. So this is all of the information. This can give you answers, but you need to know what questions you actually want to ask in the first place. Or maybe I have a problematic environment and I want to know all of the apps that are in that environment. Well, this is a model-driven app, so we can just go to apps and we can filter by environment, as an example. Or we could go to the environment itself through environments and then look at all the apps inside there. So it really is just about the questions that you're wanting to ask. Are you wanting to know how many makers you have? Well, you can go to makers and you can export the list. Maybe you want to turn that into a mailing list because you want to contact all of those people. There's so many things that you can do with this. Maybe you want to look at your AI builder models and you want to understand what's happening with those. No, I don't think you can see the usage from here, but you can actually see the usage down here, AI credits usage. So you can see how many credits are being used in AI Builder. There's so much that you can do with this app, and it even has governance aspects to it. So if we go into one of the apps, let's do one that's been created just as a test, we've got this governance tab. And this is where we can start putting more details about the app that's been built. So things like what's the business impact for this app and what's the data classification. So these are things where we can start to see how much risk there is involved in this app that's been built.
That's really, really useful, isn't it? There's so many data points in here. But if you're starting out on that governance journey, I can really see the value and, work with many clients in the past where we've helped them realize the value by using the starter kit, installing it, guiding them through that journey, inventorying everything that's in their tenant that they may not be aware of, and helping them kind of formulate a plan. What's really interesting here, for example, is, not only do you have all of these data points, but there's almost that kind of business process flow that we see at the top there, which allows you to kind of, if you've got the time and you're doing this longer term, you can kind of review all of these one by one, validate the requirements, assess the risk, and then if this is going to be useful, highlight it in an app catalog, which other makers can use and navigate to use in their own kind of solutions, right? It's really, really useful. So I can really see the value in that. One thing that has caught my eye, and I'm wondering if you can give viewers an explanation of, is the quarantine app button.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to do the same. I think that's a really important part of this. It's that if there's an app that doesn't meet your governance requirements, you want to stop people from using it, you can quarantine it. So that button gives you the ability to quarantine it. And there could be numerous reasons why you want to do that in the first place. But one of the biggest things to bear in mind with this is that we're looking at a Canvas app at the moment. We can quarantine this Canvas app, but we can't quarantine model-driven apps. So you have additional governance with Canvas apps that you don't have with model-driven apps. So something to think about if you're giving your makers the ability to build model-driven apps, bear in mind you can't quarantine them.
Yeah, it's a really good point in the model-driven app aspect. There's some limitations there, isn't there? But the ability to quarantine a Canvas app is really good. What happens from an end user perspective then? If we quarantine this app, what would happen? Do they just get like a message saying that they're blocked, or does it just disappear from being able to get access altogether?
I believe they get a message that tells them that the app has been quarantined. It's been a while since I've opened one that's been quarantined, but I think that's what it says.
So that's a really handy feature then if we've got maybe rogue makers and they're doing maybe shadow IT or something like that, we can kind of effectively lock it down right from here. Really powerful feature. And one thing that's caught my eye that I'm hoping we can kind of touch on, which I think will give a lot of value to anyone watching this, is around ownership of apps and flows and connections. So I don't know where you want to start with that, but one of the most common things that I've kind of heard from other kind of makers and users in the kind of Power Platform space is that kind of management of transferring ownership of a flow or an app, and also managing those connectors, maybe when someone leaves, for example. Do you maybe want to walk through and explain kind of how the Starter Kit can help with that?
Yeah, I guess firstly, in order to understand who owns the app, you can always find that here. So there is a difference between apps and flows in this data, in that an app has an app owner, whereas if we look at a flow, it says that it has a derived owner. So there's just a slight difference there that you can get caught out by if you're not aware of that. And within both of them, you can look at the connections that exist. So you can see what connections you're using, what connection references you've got. So you can understand if someone is connecting to Excel or they're connecting to SharePoint, you can find those details within this. But yeah, the point on what happens if, let's say, this person leaves the company and you need to then assign that app or that flow to someone else. The Center of Excellence StarterKit actually has an app for that, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, that's right. So we can actually dive into that. I think that app really helps with that kind of stuff as well. Maybe one for us to dive into in one of our next episodes, perhaps, because I think that would be really useful to see what's going on there. So maybe a bit of a teaser, what's coming up, I think. But yeah,
I'm
definitely.
excited to do that. Yeah, because this comes up constantly for a larger organization that you're constantly needing to change the ownership of flows and apps. So this is a hugely important one.
And I suppose one of the questions I have, and maybe a lot of our viewers will have, is what would be the kind of single most kind of value kind of add for using the starter kit? Like, why, other than the fact that we get all of this really good information, why would someone want to use this?
I would say because of the information. Because of the inventory is probably the number one reason why I like to use the Center of Excellence Starter Kit. It gives me enough information to understand what's happening in Power Platform and then to be able to act on it. And if I have questions, it usually gives me enough information to answer those questions. But you can see that there are all these additional things that can help you with being able to assign ownership, being able to analyze your DLP policies to understand where they apply to environments, and a host of other things. And then all of these little add-ons that you get outside of the core components as well. Yeah, many, many reasons to use it.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think everything we've spoken about in past videos up to this point, it all kind of leads into this in my mind, right? I think there's that kind of conceptual aspect of what we've talked about, how to kind of plan for these strategies and how to kind of implement them. The starter kit kind of starts to feel like, wait a minute, these aren't kind of concepts anymore. I can kind of start to put this into kind of actuality, because you're seeing all of this data on a screen. You're seeing everything that you've got. You can start to actually kind of make it real world. Like, I've got all of these environments. How can I kind of create a strategy with them? Or I've got all of these policies. How can I kind of impact assess them? And all of this stuff. It feels like this is all coming together now for a nice, really neat kind of packaged platform. And that's exactly what I think the starter kit is kind of aimed at doing, isn't it?
Yeah, and when you see the data in there, when you see your inventory, it can help to guide you as to where you want to go in the future. Maybe you'll see that you've created good environments, but you haven't named them in a way that's easy to deal with because you can't easily filter them down to what you want. Same kind of thing with apps and flows, potentially. But where I get really excited about this is the fact that all of this data is in Dataverse. So therefore, as Power Platform makers, developers, we can play with that data. We can do stuff with it. So there are existing apps and there are existing Power BI reports, but there's nothing from stopping us from creating our own apps and our own Power BI reports to get exactly what we want from it and to start extending the Center of Excellence Starter Kit. And that's where it gets very exciting, especially so when you start automating. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. You know, this gives us a really good kind of capsule, right? But every organization is different. They've got different requirements, different needs, and being able to extend the starter kit to kind of meet some of those needs, I think is fantastic. And the fact that we're given all of these tools and we can expand on them is, yeah, I think it's great. You know, as long as you've got the kind of know how to do that, yeah, it's fantastic. And I don't know about you, but I'm really super excited. One, to dive into some more of these apps in future episodes. Do stay tuned, because we're going to go really into all of this with everyone and really kind of pick apart and help kind of everyone realize how awesome this toolkit is, and hopefully give some ideas on how you can maybe start thinking about expanding the starter kit. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to kind of talking about that in future episodes. I guess just before we wrap up, is there any kind of closing statements or remarks from you, Charles?
I think that my closing remark on what we've talked about so far is just open up the Power Platform admin view and click around and see what's inside there. because there are likely to be things that you haven't thought about that you'll discover, and they will help you then with understanding what you want to do next. And maybe give you ideas as to where you want to automate things, what direction you want to go in. Just start learning, start exploring. It's a great thing to do.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Yeah, definitely just, be curious with all of this stuff, because you'll find new things and new tools that will just be mind-blowing at times, right? So definitely do that. But for now, thank you for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, please do like and subscribe. We look forward to talking about this in future episodes, and we'll see you in the next one.